Long ago, in a quiet valley where the hills blushed with sunrise, there stood a small village of potters and shepherds. Among them lived a widow named Leora, and her two daughters, Elellena and Siren. Elellena, the elder, was strikingly beautiful. Her hair glimmered like spun copper, and her eyes were bright as fire. But pride had settled in her heart like a thorn. She loved fine ribbons, silks, and mirrors more than the people around her. Siren, the younger, was gentle as spring rain. Her hands were often stained with clay from helping her mother, and though her clothes were plain, her smile could light a room warmer than any hearth. Their cottage was humble, its walls patched with old stones, a small rose garden out front, and a faint smell of bread and earth that made it feel alive. Though they shared one roof, peace seldom lingered there. One morning, while the mist still clung to the grass, Leora sighed at the empty water jar. "Elellena," she said, "go fetch water from the spring by the forest. We'll need it for baking." Elellena frowned. "Must I go? The path is muddy, and the air damp." "Send Siren instead, she loves trudging through dirt." Before Leora could reply, Siren rose quietly, lifted the jar, and wrapped her shawl around her shoulders. "It's no trouble, mother. I'll go." Elellena smirked and returned to her mirror. "Of course she will," she whispered. "It's what she's good for." Leora looked at Siren with both pride and sorrow. Her younger daughter had inherited her late father's kindness, yet kindness, she feared, never filled a hungry belly. The path wound through tall trees whose branches met like cathedral arches. Sunlight dappled the mossy ground, and the air smelled of rain and pine. Siren carried the heavy jar carefully. When she reached the spring, a clear pool fed by a silver stream, she knelt beside it and sighed with relief. She filled the jar, then sat on a rock to rest. From the shadows came a weak voice. "My child, might you spare a drink for an old traveler?" Siren turned and saw an old woman cloaked in gray, her hands trembling around a wooden staff. Her eyes, though dim, held a strange light like embers in ash. "Of course, grandmother," Siren said softly. She rinsed a cup, filled it fresh, and offered it with both hands. The old woman drank slowly, her gaze never leaving the girl's gentle face. "You are kind when no one watches," the woman murmured. "Such hearts are rare as midwinter roses." Siren smiled shyly. "It costs nothing to be kind, ma'am." At that, the woman's form shimmered. The rags turned to robes of flame-kissed silk, and a faint glow surrounded her. Siren gasped. You're a fairy of the Ember rose," the woman said. "Keeper of warmth in hearts grown cold. For your selfless spirit, I grant a gift. From this day, every kind word you speak shall bloom as a rose petal wreathed in light, a blessing to those who hear you. But remember, speak gently, for even roses may burn if handled in anger." Before Siren could thank her, the fairy faded into mist, leaving only the scent of smoke and roses. Siren hurried home, heart trembling between wonder and disbelief. When she entered the cottage, her mother looked up sharply. "Where have you been, girl? The dough is rising without you." "I'm sorry, mother," Siren said, and as she spoke, soft red rose petals drifted from her lips, glowing faintly before settling on the floor. Elellena gasped. What trick is this?" Siren covered her mouth, stunned. But when she spoke again, telling the story of the spring and the old woman, more petals and tiny sparks of light floated through the air, filling the room with perfume. Her mother dropped her bowl in astonishment. "By the heavens, it's a miracle," she cried. Ellena's eyes gleamed not with awe, but envy. "A miracle for her," she hissed. "Then I shall have a greater one." That very afternoon, Elellena wrapped herself in her finest shawl and set off toward the forest. her heart full of pride and her mind full of schemes. When she reached the spring, the forest was quiet except for the hum of cicadas. She knelt to fill her jar, muttering, "Let that old beggar appear again. I'll charm her better than Siren ever could." And indeed, the air shimmered, and the same old woman appeared. But now she looked weary, leaning heavily on her staff. "My dear," she said, "might you spare a little water?" Elellena rolled her eyes. "You again? Fetch it yourself. I'm not your servant." The woman's expression darkened like a cloud covering the sun. "Do you know to whom you speak?" "I know you're in my way," Elellena snapped. "I came for my own blessing, not to waste time on your nonsense." The air crackled. The old woman rose taller, her eyes blazing like coals. "Then you shall have a gift worthy of your heart," she said, her voice echoing through the trees. "From this moment, every word you speak in cruelty shall turn to ash and smoke. Let pride choke on its own fire." Elellena tried to protest, but when she opened her mouth, a puff of gray smoke drifted out hot and bitter. She coughed, terrified, and fled home. When Elellena burst through the door, Leora and Siren looked up in alarm. "Elellena, what's wrong?" Siren asked. But when Elellena cried, "She cursed me." A cloud of ash poured from her mouth, coating the floor in soot. Leora screamed and stumbled back. "Stop it! Stop!" Elellena tried again to speak, but each word turned to bitter smoke. Her once lovely face grew gray with shame. She fled to her room, sobbing. For days, she refused to leave. Leora grew desperate, blaming Siren. "This is your doing. You and your witch's roses. You've ruined your sister." "No, mother," Siren pleaded. "It was her pride that brought it. The fairies' gifts reflect our hearts." But her mother would not listen. The prince's journey trumpets faintly in distance. Hopeful tone returns narrator. Not long after, word spread across the valley of a strange wonder. A young woman whose voice made roses bloom and light dance in the air. A prince, returning from a distant war, heard the tale. His heart, weary from battle, longed for gentleness and truth. He rode to the village with his retinue and stopped at Leora's cottage. When Siren opened the door, he was struck by her warmth and grace. She curtsied shyly, and as she greeted him, glowing rose petals drifted from her lips and fell to the ground like soft fire. The prince smiled. "Never have I seen kindness made visible." He asked to speak with her, and they walked through the garden where the roses now bloomed brighter than ever. They talked of the world, of mercy and courage, of how a gentle word could heal wounds no sword could. By the time the sun set, his heart was set too. "If my kingdom must have a queen," he said, "let it be one whose words bring light." Soon, the humble cottage was filled with royal messengers and seamstresses. The wedding was held under the great willow by the river. As Siren spoke her vows, the air filled with petals and golden light that danced upon the guests. The people called her the Ember Rose Queen, for her words warmed hearts like fire in winter. Even Elellena came, hidden behind a veil, tears streaking her ashen cheeks. She longed to speak but feared the smoke that would betray her. Siren saw her sister at the edge of the crowd and approached gently. "Elellena," she whispered, "you are welcome here." Elellena fell to her knees, sobbing. "I have no right. I brought you pain." Siren touched her shoulder. "Then speak not in anger, speak in love." Elellena trembled, then whispered, "Forgive me." To her astonishment, no smoke came, only a faint glow, like dying embers reigniting. The fairy's voice echoed faintly in the wind. "The fire that humbles itself becomes light." From that day, Ellena's curse was lifted. No longer did she speak in ash, though her words bore no roses either. They were simple, honest, and that was enough. Under the reign of Siren, and her prince. Kindness became law as natural as rain. Orphans found homes, strangers were welcomed, and even the poorest fields bloomed with color. Wherever the queen spoke, roses sprang, yet none were taken for greed. She taught her people, beauty fades, but goodness grows. A single kind word can warm 1,000 hearts. Leora, now old and frail, lived in comfort at the palace. One evening she looked at her daughters, Siren radiant with love, Elellena humble and at peace, and whispered, "I was blind to what riches truly are." Siren kissed her mother's forehead. They were always here, mother only hidden. Years later, when the moon was full and the roses slept beneath dew, Siren wandered alone into the royal garden. By the silver fountain, she saw a faint glow. The fairy of the Ember Rose stood there, smiling. "You have kept your gift well," she said. "Your kindness has kindled many hearts." Siren bowed. "I only did what my heart knew was right. And that," said the fairy, "is the truest magic." She touched Siren's hand, and from the queen's palm grew a single rose of living flame. "Keep this as your symbol. When you speak, let love be your ember." Then the fairy vanished, leaving a trail of light that faded into the stars. Thus ended the tale of the ember and the rose. Elellena, once proud, found peace in humility. Siren, ever gentle, ruled with grace. And the kingdom flourished not through gold or war, but through kindness spoken, shared, and everlasting. For pride may burn bright, but kindness is the ember that never dies. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fairy tales, and comment which type of story you want next.